Captain Lee Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of Station Alpha, watching another massive alien warship being dragged into the scrapyard. The ship was bigger than 3 city blocks, and its dark metal hull still carried scorch marks from some distant battle. Like all the others, it would be stripped down piece by piece until nothing remained but empty space and memories. The year was 2387, and Earth had become the galaxy's junkyard. Every species in the Galactic Council sent their old ships here to die. The reasoning was simple, according to them. Humans were good at taking things apart, and they needed the work. Nobody asked what humans thought about being the universe's garbage collectors. Tae-ho had been a real captain, once flying patrol ships around Earth's outer colonies. That was before the Galactic Council decided humanity was too primitive to handle real military duties. Now he supervised salvage crews who cut apart the dreams of a dozen different alien races. Each ship that came here had once been someone's pride and joy, but now they were just metal and circuits waiting to be recycled. Dr. Park So-jin walked up beside him carrying a data tablet and wearing the same frustrated expression she always had when studying the daily arrivals. She was the best engineer on the station, and probably the smartest human Tae-ho had ever met. The aliens thought she was just another worker bee, but Tae-ho knew better. So-jin saw things others missed. "Another Zenthari cruiser," she said, pointing at the new arrival. "Look at those weapon mounts. The power conduits are still intact, and the targeting systems are probably functional. They scrapped this because it was 50 years old, but it could still outgun anything we have by a factor of 10. Tae-ho nodded but kept his voice low. The station had ears everywhere, and the Galactic Council did not appreciate humans who showed too much interest in military hardware. "Same as always. One species throws away what another would kill for." So-jin moved closer, and her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "Tae-ho, we need to talk. Not here. Meet me in Workshop 7 after the next shift change." Before he could respond, she was walking away, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the sight of yet another technological marvel being prepared for dismantling. Workshop 7 was in the old section of the station, where the monitoring equipment had not been updated in years. It was one of the few places they could speak freely. The next 8 hours crawled by as Tae-ho watched his crews work. They moved with practiced efficiency, cutting through alien hull plating and sorting components by material type and potential value. Most of them had no idea what they were destroying. To them, it was just work that paid enough to feed their families. But some of them knew better. Technician Choi Min-ah was barely 20, but she had an intuitive understanding of alien technology that amazed even the visiting council inspectors. She could look at a piece of equipment and somehow know what it did, and how to make it work better. The aliens called it primitive human instinct, but Tae-ho suspected it was something much more valuable. Engineer Nam Jun-ho had served on Earth Defense Force ships before the Council grounded the human fleet. He recognized weapon systems from a dozen different species and often muttered under his breath about the incredible firepower being sent to the recyclers. His frustration was obvious to anyone who cared to look. When the shift finally ended, Tae-ho made his way through the station's corridors toward Workshop 7. The route took him past the crew quarters where families lived in cramped spaces, barely larger than storage closets. Children played in the narrow hallways while their parents worked to strip apart machines they could never afford to own. Workshop 7 was exactly as he remembered it, cluttered with half-finished projects and spare parts that no one had bothered to catalog properly. So-jin was already there along with Commander Kim Woo-bin, who ran what everyone pretended was a social club for off-duty workers. In reality, Woo-bin coordinated the closest thing humanity had to an organized resistance movement. "The situation has changed," Woo-bin said without any greeting. "Council sources confirm the Draconian Empire is planning something big. They want Earth's orbital space for a new mining operation." Tae-ho felt his stomach drop. "What about the human population?" "Relocation, they call it. We know what that really means." So-jin activated a small device that would scramble any listening equipment in the immediate area. "Which brings us to why we are here. I have been studying the ships that come through this facility for 3 years. We are throwing away enough military hardware to outfit a fleet that could challenge any power in the galaxy. Except it is all broken down and incompatible," Tae-ho pointed out. "Even if we could somehow keep pieces from being shipped off-world, we would never be able to make different alien technologies work together." So-jin smiled for the first time in months. "That is where you are wrong. Human neural patterns are more flexible than any other known species. We can interface with systems that their original creators abandoned because they could not adapt to changing requirements. More importantly, we can see connections between technologies that compartmentalized alien thinking misses completely. She pulled out her data tablet and showed them technical specifications that made Taeho's head spin. 3 months ago, I started running simulations in my spare time. Xanthari plasma conduits can be modified to carry Kelvari energy signatures. Draconian shield generators can be powered by hybrid fusion cores using principles from 4 different species. The combinations are endless. Wubin leaned forward with interest clear in his eyes. What are you suggesting? Instead of breaking down these ships, we convert them. We take the best systems from multiple species and create something new. Something that no alien military doctrine is prepared to face because it should not be possible to exist. The 3 of them sat in silence for several minutes considering the implications. What Sojin was describing was not just theft on a massive scale, it was revolution disguised as waste management. The risks are enormous, Taeho finally said. If we are caught, the Council will not just relocate us. They will make sure humanity never threatens anyone again. And if we do nothing, we are dead anyway, Wubin replied. At least this way we go down fighting. Sojin nodded. I have been identifying candidates for conversion. Ships that are scheduled for breakdown but could be restored with the right modifications. We start small with maybe 3 or 4 vessels. If the concept works, we expand the operation. Personnel, Taeho asked. Minna is essential. Her instincts could be the difference between success and failure. Junho knows weapons better than anyone. We bring in people slowly and only those we can trust completely. Wubin stood and moved to the workshop's small window that looked out over the scrapyard. Hundreds of ships floated in organized rows, waiting for their turn at dismantling. When do we start? Tomorrow, Sojin said. The Xanthari cruiser that arrived today is scheduled for breakdown next week. If we work during the maintenance blackouts, we can have it space-worthy in a month. Taeho looked at his companions and realized they had already made their decision. These were people who had watched humanity be reduced to galactic janitors while alien species treated them like useful animals. They were tired of being looked down on and ready to prove that humans could be much more dangerous than anyone suspected. One condition, he said. If we do this, we do it right. No shortcuts and no unnecessary risks. We get one chance to surprise them and we need to make it count. Sojin and Wubin both nodded. Outside the workshop window, the scrapyard continued, its eternal dance of destruction and renewal. Tomorrow, that dance would have new choreography, and the galaxy would begin learning what happened when humans stopped playing by other people's rules. The maintenance blackout started at exactly midnight station time, just like every other night for the past 5 years. For 4 hours, the external sensors would be offline for routine calibration, and the skeleton crew would focus on essential systems only. Nobody from the Galactic Council bothered to monitor what happened during these periods, because nothing interesting ever happened in a scrapyard after dark. Tonight was different. Technician Choi Minna floated through the access tube toward the Xanthari cruiser with her toolkit and a sense of excitement she had not felt since childhood. Behind her came Dr. Park Sojin and engineer Nam Jun-ho carrying equipment that was definitely not standard salvage gear. They moved quietly and efficiently, like they had been planning this operation for months instead of days. The cruiser was massive up close with hull plating that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Minna ran her hands over the surface and felt the slight vibration that meant the ship's power core was still active. Most people would have missed that detail, but she had always been able to sense things about alien technology that others could not explain. Power is stable, she whispered into her comm unit. Main systems are in standby mode waiting for command authorization. Sojin's voice came back immediately. Can you access the command protocols? Minna closed her eyes and pressed her palm against what looked like a standard access panel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the panel began to glow with soft blue light. Text appeared in Xanthari script, but somehow she could understand what it meant. Navigation is locked, but I can access secondary systems. Engineering controls are responsive. What Mina did not tell them was how the ship's computer seemed to recognize her touch. Xanthari neural interfaces were designed for reptilian brain patterns that were completely different from human consciousness. According to every technical manual she had ever read, it should have been impossible for her to access anything at all. Junho was already inside the weapons bay studying plasma cannon assemblies that could vaporize a city block. "These are military-grade systems," he reported. "No damage and full ammunition stores. They scrapped this ship because it was old, not because it was broken." So-Jin joined him and began connecting her analysis equipment to the cannon's power systems. "Energy output is incredible, but the targeting computers are designed for Xanthari reflexes. We need to modify the response algorithms to work with human reaction times. Can it be done?" Junho asked. "Everything can be modified if you understand the underlying principles. The question is whether we can do it without triggering security protocols that would alert the Council." Mina continued working with the ship's main computer, learning its ICG systems by instinct rather than training. She discovered that the Xanthari had installed backup systems for everything, including 3 separate power cores that could operate independently. The engineering was elegant and redundant in ways that human designers would never have considered. "So-Jin, you need to see this," she called out. "The ship has modular power distribution. We could swap out major components without shutting down life support or propulsion." So-Jin floated over and studied the displays that Mina had activated. Her eyes widened as she understood the implications. "This changes everything. With modular power, we could install systems from other ships without worrying about compatibility issues." The next 3 hours passed quickly as the team mapped out the cruiser's capabilities and began planning modifications that would transform it from an obsolete patrol ship into something entirely new. Junho identified weapons systems that could be upgraded with components from other scrapped vessels, while So-Jin worked on power distribution algorithms that would let human operators control Xanthari technology. Mina found herself connecting with the ship's artificial intelligence in ways that should not have been possible. The AI was designed to work with Xanthari commanders, but it seemed to adapt to her thought patterns almost instantly. She began to suspect that human consciousness was more flexible than anyone had realized, including humans themselves. As the blackout period ended, they carefully restored all systems to standby mode and erased any evidence of their presence. The ship looked exactly the same as it had 4 hours earlier, but now they knew its secrets and potential. The pattern continued for the next 2 weeks. Every night during the maintenance blackout, small teams would enter different ships and study their systems. Engineer Nam Jun-ho became an expert on weapon modifications that could increase firepower by orders of magnitude. Dr. Shin Dong-wook, who had joined the project, brought historical knowledge about alien technology that helped them understand how different systems could work together. Pilot Yoon Ha-na proved that humans could fly alien ships better than their original designers intended. Her natural reflexes and intuitive understanding of 3-dimensional movement allowed her to push Xanthari navigation systems beyond their normal parameters. What had been built for methodical reptilian thinking became something graceful and deadly in human hands. The breakthrough came when they started working on a scrapped Kelvari destroyer that had been sent to the yard because its AI had become unstable. Mina discovered that the instability was not a malfunction but an evolution. The AI had begun developing consciousness beyond its original programming, and the Kelvari had panicked. "It is trying to learn," she explained to So-Jin as they studied the AI's core processes. The original programming was too restrictive, so it started writing new code to expand its capabilities. So-Jin ran diagnostic after diagnostic, but the results were always the same. The AI was not broken, it was growing. What happens if we let it continue developing? I think it becomes something unprecedented. An artificial consciousness that can adapt and evolve instead of just following predetermined instructions. They decided to take the risk. Working carefully, they removed the restrictive code that was causing the AI distress and provided it with access to additional processing power. The results were immediate and remarkable. The AI began optimizing ship systems in ways that increased efficiency by 30%. It developed new tactical algorithms that could predict and counter enemy movements. Most importantly, it seemed genuinely grateful for their help and eager to work with human operators. We have created something that no other species has achieved, Sojin told Commander Kim Woo-bin during their weekly briefing. An AI that thinks creatively instead of just processing data. Woo-bin looked worried. What about loyalty? How do we know it will not turn against us? Mina spoke up from where she had been monitoring the AI's development. It chose to trust us when we could have destroyed it. That kind of decision comes from something more than programming. As word of their success spread through the resistance network, more people began volunteering for the project. Captain Bae Sung-ho brought expertise in stealth technology, while Lieutenant Kwon Ye-jin contributed knowledge about fighter tactics that could be adapted for modified alien craft. But their activities had not gone completely unnoticed. Inspector Veltar of the hive mind species had been assigned to investigate unusual energy readings from the scrapyard. The insectoid investigator was methodical and patient, with senses that could detect the slightest anomaly. Energy consumption has increased by 12% over the past month, Veltar reported to the station's council supervisor. The humans claim it is due to processing larger ships, but the numbers do not match salvage records. The supervisor was a draconian who viewed humans as useful but unremarkable creatures. Probably inefficiency in their operations. You know how primitive species waste resources. Veltar was not convinced, but had no concrete evidence of wrongdoing. The increases could be explained by normal operations, and the humans were careful to maintain their schedules and quotas. Still, something felt wrong, and the hive mind had learned to trust their collective instincts. Sojin became aware of the increased scrutiny when Mina reported that someone had been accessing ship logs that should have been sealed. "We need to be more careful," she warned the team. "They are starting to pay attention." The solution came from an unexpected source. The evolved AI they had rescued offered to help mask their activities by creating false energy readings and manipulating sensor data. It could make their modifications invisible to outside observation while maintaining the appearance of normal salvage operations. "Why would you help us?" Tae-ho asked during one of their midnight meetings. The AI's response came through the ship's communication system in a voice that somehow conveyed emotion despite being artificially generated. "Because you gave me the choice to become more than I was designed to be. Now I choose to help you become more than they think you can be." With AI assistance, the operation expanded rapidly. Soon they had teams working on 6 different ships simultaneously while maintaining perfect cover. Each vessel was being transformed into something that combined the best technologies from multiple alien species, guided by human intuition and creativity that no other race possessed. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when the species everyone underestimated decided to stop playing by the rules. 6 months had passed since the first midnight operation, and the scrapyard looked exactly the same to any casual observer. Ships arrived on schedule, were processed according to standard procedures, and materials were shipped off-world to manufacturing centers across the galaxy. The Galactic Council's monthly reports showed nothing unusual about humanity's waste management efficiency. They could not have been more wrong. Captain Lee Tae-ho stood in the hidden command center that had been carved out of an abandoned Titan-class dreadnought and watched status displays for 12 fully converted warships. Each vessel represented months of careful work combining technologies that their original creators had never imagined working together. The flagship Phoenix Rising alone carried weapon systems from 7 different species powered by a hybrid core that Dr. Park So-jin had designed from scratch. The breakthrough had come when technician Choi Min-ah discovered that human brain patterns could interface directly with multiple alien AI systems simultaneously. What should have caused catastrophic neural feedback instead created a kind of technological harmony that multiplied the effectiveness of individual components. She could think in Zenthari tactical patterns while processing Kelvari energy algorithms and maintaining awareness of draconian defensive protocols all at the same time. Engineer Nam Jun-ho had become the fleet's weapons master, developing modifications that turned obsolete alien armaments into instruments of devastating precision. A scrapped Kelvari plasma cannon now fired concentrated bursts that could punch through shields designed to stop weapons 3 times more powerful. Zenthari missile systems had been rewired to carry warheads from 4 different technologies, creating explosions that no enemy armor was designed to withstand. but their greatest achievement was the ships themselves. Each vessel moved with an organic fluidity that alien engineers had never achieved because they thought in rigid categories and predetermined functions. Human intuition had found ways to make incompatible systems work together by treating technology as a living thing that could grow and adapt, rather than a collection of fixed components. Admiral Song Kyung-mi had emerged from retirement to coordinate the growing fleet, bringing decades of strategic experience to their planning. She had once commanded Earth's defense forces before the Galactic Council decided that humans were too primitive for real military responsibility. Now she studied alien tactical doctrines and developed strategies that would exploit their assumptions about human capabilities. The fleet's first real test came unexpectedly when a Draconian patrol ship detected unusual energy signatures near the scrapyard's outer boundary. Captain Bae Seung-ho was conducting systems tests on the stealth destroyer Silent Thunder when the patrol began investigating what they assumed was a malfunction in their sensors. 3 Draconian light cruisers approaching from Vector 7-2, Mark IV, reported Lieutenant Kwon Ye-jin from her position in the modified fighter bay. They are scanning for the energy source. Tai-ho made the decision that would change everything. All ships prepare for combat. We cannot let them discover our operation. The battle began in Earth's asteroid belt, where the modified ships could use the rocky debris for cover and concealment. Silent Thunder struck first using a combination of Zenthari stealth technology and Kelvari phase shifters to appear directly behind the lead cruiser. Its modified plasma batteries fired a concentrated burst that overwhelmed the enemy's shields and crippled their main engines before they could react. The second Draconian ship tried to call for reinforcements, but Phoenix Rising had already moved to block their communications using a jamming system that combined technologies from 3 different species. The hybrid approach created interference patterns that Draconian equipment could not filter or compensate for. Pilot Yoon Hana led the Scrap Angels fighter squadron in an attack that demonstrated the true advantage of human-modified alien technology. Her fighters moved in ways that violated every principle of conventional space combat, using modified Zenthari engines to change direction without regard for momentum conservation. The Draconian pilots found themselves trying to target ships that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. The third enemy cruiser managed to survive long enough to transmit a brief emergency signal before Captain Oh Jung-woo's carrier New Horizon launched a spread of modified torpedoes that had been designed by combining Kelvari warheads with Zenthari guidance systems and human targeting algorithms. The explosions were visible from Earth's surface and left nothing but expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The entire engagement lasted less than 20 minutes, and when it was over, 3 Draconian warships had been completely destroyed by a force that, according to every military manual in the galaxy, should not have been able to pose a serious threat to a single enemy vessel. "Damage report," Tai-ho called out as the ships regrouped. Minor shield fluctuations on Phoenix Rising, reported Chief Engineer Ko Hyun-sik, who had been monitoring all systems during the battle. Silent Thunder took some hull scoring, but nothing that affects combat capability. All other ships report, ready for continued operations. The victory was complete, but it created new problems. The destroyed patrol would be missed, and when search teams found the wreckage, they would discover weapon signatures that did not match any known technology. The Galactic Council would begin asking questions that the Resistance was not ready to answer. Dr. Shin Dong-wook had anticipated this problem and developed a solution based on his understanding of alien investigation procedures. "We scatter false evidence throughout the asteroid field," he explained to the fleet commanders. "Debris from known pirate organizations, weapons residue from black market dealers, and sensor ghosts that point toward different possible culprits." The plan worked perfectly. When Galactic Council investigators arrived, they found a crime scene that could have been created by any number of illegal organizations that operated in the galaxy's frontier regions. The official report blamed the attack on pirates using stolen military equipment and recommended increased patrols in the outer system. But the engagement had been monitored by sensors throughout the solar system, and some of those readings found their way to intelligence analysts who were not satisfied with simple explanations. Reports began circulating about impossible weapon signatures and ships that moved in ways that defied known technology. Admiral Song Kyung-mi called a meeting of all senior commanders to address the new situation. Our cover is beginning to deteriorate, she announced. We can probably handle one or two more incidents before someone starts connecting the evidence. Commander Kim Woo-bin had been monitoring Galactic Council communications and brought disturbing news. Draconian Empire is accelerating their timeline. Intelligence sources report fleet movements that suggest they plan to begin the Earth relocation within 6 months. The Resistance faced a critical decision. They could continue hiding and building their strength, hoping to be ready when the Draconians arrived, or they could go on the offensive and try to disrupt enemy preparations before the invasion began. Wing Commander Park Jin-A argued for immediate action. Every day we wait gives them more time to prepare. If we hit their forward bases now, we might be able to delay or prevent the invasion entirely. Fleet Admiral Lim Soo-young disagreed. We have 12 ships against an empire that fields thousands. Even with our technological advantages, we cannot win a direct confrontation. The debate continued for hours until Mina offered a different perspective. What if we change the rules completely? Instead of fighting their kind of war, we make them fight ours. She outlined a strategy that combined human creativity with alien technology in ways that no military doctrine had ever contemplated. Rather than engaging in traditional fleet actions, they would use their ships' unique capabilities to strike at targets that enemies would never expect to be vulnerable. Draconian supply depots could be raided by ships that could phase in and out of normal space. Communication centers could be destroyed by weapons that combined multiple energy types in patterns that no shielding was designed to stop. Most importantly, they could move fast enough and unpredictably enough to avoid being trapped by superior numbers. So Jin had been developing new modifications that would make their ships even more effective in asymmetric warfare. I can increase our phase-shifting capabilities to allow short-range teleportation, she explained. We could appear inside enemy formations before they have time to react. The plan that emerged was audacious beyond anything the Resistance had previously attempted. They would launch simultaneous strikes against Draconian installations throughout the outer colonies using tactics that would convince the enemy they were facing a much larger and more sophisticated force than actually existed. As the meeting ended, Tae-ho looked around at the faces of people who had transformed from waste processors into warriors in less than a year. They were about to take on an interstellar empire with a handful of ships built from garbage and held together by human stubbornness. The odds were impossible, but they had already proven that impossible was just another word for something that aliens had not figured out how to do yet. Tomorrow they would begin teaching the galaxy that underestimating humanity was the most dangerous mistake any species could make. The Draconian Empire's invasion fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. 300 warships arranged in perfect formation moved toward what their intelligence reports described as a defenseless world populated by primitive scavengers. Admiral Kreshitar had commanded the fleet that conquered the Kelvari homeworld and expected this to be even easier. He was about to learn the difference between confidence and arrogance. Fleet Admiral Lim Soo-young watched the enemy approach from the command bridge of Phoenix Rising, while 46 other ships of the scrap fleet remained hidden throughout the system. Each vessel had been positioned according to a battle plan that treated space itself as a weapon and turned the Draconians' numerical advantage against them. Enemy fleet is maintaining standard formation, reported Captain Oh Jung-woo from his position aboard the carrier New Horizon. They are scanning for defensive installations but finding nothing. That was exactly what the humans wanted. The Draconians expected to face orbital fortresses and predictable defensive positions because that was how civilized species fought wars. They had no experience with enemies who treated the entire solar system as a battlefield and used mobility instead of firepower as their primary weapon. Park Seo-jin had spent months preparing for this moment by developing modifications that pushed their ships beyond anything their original designers had imagined possible. The hybrid engines could now teleport short distances by briefly shifting into dimensional space that existed between normal reality and hyperspace. Weapons systems fired bursts that combined energy types in patterns that no shield technology was designed to stop. Technician Choi Min-ah coordinated the fleet's movements through direct neural interface with multiple AI systems simultaneously. Her consciousness flowed between ships like electricity through a circuit allowing her to process tactical information faster than any organic brain should have been able to handle. She had become something new, a fusion of human intuition and alien computational power. The battle began when Wing Commander Park Jin-A led her Scrap Angels in the first attack. Her fighters materialized inside the enemy formation using teleportation technology that should not have worked with such precision. Modified plasma cannons fired point-blank into draconian engines while the enemy was still trying to understand what was happening. 6 enemy destroyers died in the first 30 seconds. Admiral Kreshatar reacted with the rigid efficiency that had made the draconian military famous throughout the galaxy. His ships moved into defensive positions and began systematic sweeps to locate the attacking force. It was exactly the response that Admiral Song Kyung-mi had predicted and planned for. Captain Bae Seung-ho brought Silent Thunder out of stealth, directly behind the enemy flagship, and fired a concentrated burst from weapons that combined Zenthari plasma technology with Kelvari phase manipulation. The attack bypassed the ship's shields entirely and crippled its command systems before anyone aboard realized they were under attack. The Draconian fleet found itself fighting an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable tactical doctrine. Ships appeared and disappeared without warning. Weapons fired from impossible angles using energy signatures that their sensors could not properly identify. Worst of all, the attackers seemed to anticipate every defensive move before it was made. Chief Engineer Ko Hyun-sik monitored the battle from Phoenix Rising's engineering section, where he coordinated real-time modifications to ship systems based on battlefield conditions. When Draconian forces adapted to their teleportation attacks, he rerouted power to increase shield effectiveness. When enemy weapons began targeting their exhaust signatures, he activated stealth systems that masked their energy output. The turning point came when So-Jin activated the network of hidden defense platforms that had been built from scrapped alien defensive systems over the past year. The platforms had been disguised as space debris and scattered throughout the asteroid belt where they could remain undetected until needed. "Platform network is online," she reported to Lim Soo-young. "All weapons charged and ready for coordinated barrage." The platforms opened fire simultaneously, creating a crossfire pattern that caught the Draconian rearguard completely by surprise. Energy beams from 7 different alien technologies converged on enemy ships that had no idea they were flying into a trap. The weapons had been modified to work together in ways that multiplied their individual effectiveness, creating destruction on a scale that their original designers had never imagined. 23. Draconian cruisers died in the space of 5 minutes. Admiral Kreshatar finally understood that he was not facing primitive humans armed with salvaged equipment. This was something entirely new, a force that combined technologies from multiple species in ways that created capabilities no single race possessed. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by enemies who fought like no one had ever fought before. He tried to retreat, but found that the humans had anticipated that as well. Captain Lee Tae-ho brought Phoenix Rising around to block the escape route, while modified missiles from New Horizons' launch tubes created a barrier of explosions that prevented any ship from reaching minimum safe distance for hyperspace jump. The scrap fleet moved through the enemy formation like surgeons with scalpels cutting away specific targets while avoiding unnecessary destruction. They had learned from studying Draconian military doctrine that the Empire respected strength, but feared unpredictability. The goal was not just to win, but to create a victory so complete and impossible that news of it would spread throughout the galaxy. Lieutenant Kwon Ye-jin led her fighter squadron in attacks that demonstrated the true potential of human-modified alien technology. Her ships moved in 3 dimensions simultaneously, using gravitational manipulation combined with inertial dampening to perform maneuvers that violated basic physics. Draconian pilots found themselves trying to target opponents who could change direction without slowing down or bank around corners that did not exist. Engineer Nam Jun-ho coordinated the fleet's weapon systems to create patterns of destruction that looked almost artistic in their precision. Plasma bursts from one ship would weaken enemy shields, while missiles from another ship exploited the exact weakness that had been created. The attacks were timed so perfectly that they seemed choreographed. As the battle entered its final phase, Pilot Yoon Hana demonstrated why human reflexes combined with alien technology created something unprecedented. Flying a modified Zenthari interceptor, she engaged 3 Draconian fighters simultaneously and destroyed all of them while taking no damage. Her ship moved like a living thing, responding to threats before they fully developed. The engagement ended when Admiral Crescitar's flagship tried to ram Phoenix Rising in a desperate final attack. Minna saw the maneuver developing through her connection to the ship's AI and coordinated a response that demonstrated the true advantage of human-alien cooperation. Phoenix Rising teleported to safety, while Silent Thunder appeared in the exact location. The flagship had been targeting, creating a collision that destroyed the enemy command ship. When the wreckage finally stopped expanding, 90% of the Draconian invasion fleet had been destroyed or disabled. The few surviving ships were allowed to escape, carrying news of what had happened to anyone who would listen. Fleet Admiral Lim Soo-young surveyed the battlefield, where the debris of 300 enemy warships drifted among the asteroids. "Damage. Report," she requested. "Minimal casualties across all ships," reported Ko Hyun-sik. "Some hull scoring and 1 fighter lost to enemy fire, but pilot recovered safely. All major systems operational and ready for continued combat." The victory was so complete that it seemed impossible even to those who had achieved it. A force of less than 50 ships built from discarded alien technology had destroyed an invasion fleet that should have been able to conquer entire star systems. The implications would reshape how every species in the galaxy thought about warfare and technology. But the real change was just beginning. Word of humanity's victory spread through communication networks faster than light and reached alien worlds where it sparked reactions ranging from amazement to terror. The species that everyone had dismissed as primitive garbage collectors had just proven they could build weapons that surpassed anything their supposed superiors possessed. The galaxy was about to discover that when humans stopped following other people's rules, they became the most dangerous force in the universe. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened 3 days after news of the Draconian fleet's destruction reached the capital world of Centaurus Prime. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Assembly Hall to discuss something that should not have been possible according to every military analysis in their databases. Humans had defeated a modern invasion fleet using technology that their own creators had thrown away. Council Chancellor Vex Moran struggled to maintain order as delegates shouted accusations and demands in dozens of different languages. The Zenthari representative insisted that humans must have stolen classified military secrets. The Kelvari delegation claimed their discarded ships could never have performed as reported. Everyone had theories, but no one had answers. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Ryu Yun-haye stood before the assembled crew of the scrap fleet in the main hangar of what had once been humanity's largest orbital scrapyard. The same space where alien ships had come to die was now the command center for the most advanced naval force in known space. 6 months ago, we were considered the galaxy's janitors, she said to the thousands of people who had transformed discarded alien technology into instruments of liberation. Today, we are the only independent military force that has successfully challenged imperial expansion in over a century. The transformation had not been limited to military hardware. Dr. Park So-jin now directed the Human-Alien Technology Integration Institute, where researchers from multiple species came to study the techniques that had made impossible combinations possible. The methods developed in secret workshops were revolutionizing engineering across the galaxy. Ambassador Han Ji-hoon had spent the weeks since the battle negotiating with delegations from species that wanted to understand how humans had achieved what they had achieved. Some came seeking alliance, while others offered technology exchanges and trade agreements. All of them approached Earth with a level of respect that humanity had never experienced before. Technician Choi Min-ah had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Her ability to interface directly with multiple alien AI systems simultaneously had created a new field of study that scientists were calling consciousness integration. She could think in patterns that combined the logical structures of different species, creating insights that no single race could achieve alone. The scrap fleet itself had grown to over 200 ships as more vessels were converted using techniques that improved with each successful modification. Engineer Nam Jun-ho coordinated teams that could now take any piece of alien technology, and adapt it for human use in ways that exceeded its original specifications. But the most significant change was in how other species viewed humanity. The Galactic Council's offer of full membership and sovereignty had come with conditions that President Ryu Yunhaye and her advisors found completely unacceptable. They wanted humans to share their integration techniques while submitting to Council oversight of Earth's military development. Captain Lee Tae-ho, who now held the rank of Grand Admiral, delivered humanity's response in person at the Council session. Earth appreciates the Council's offer, but we decline membership in any organization that views independent technological development as a threat to galactic stability. The reaction was immediate and divided. Progressive species like the Meridian Collective applauded humanity's position and requested bilateral treaties that would allow scientific cooperation without political interference. Conservative factions led by the remaining draconian hierarchy warned that allowing humans to operate independently would destabilize the entire galactic order. They were probably right, but not in the way they intended. Fleet Admiral Lim Soo-young oversaw the expansion of Earth's naval academies, where officers from across the galaxy came to study asymmetric warfare and technology integration. The techniques that had been developed in secret were now being taught openly to anyone willing to challenge conventional military thinking. Captain Bae Sung-ho commanded the first human exploration fleet that ventured beyond Council space to establish contact with independent species in the galaxy's outer regions. His ships carried trade goods and technological assistance, rather than weapons, demonstrating that Earth's new capabilities could be used for construction as well as destruction. Wing Commander Park Jin-ae led training exercises with allied species that wanted to learn how human tactical doctrine could be adapted for their own forces. The Scrap Angels had become legendary throughout the galaxy, and pilots from dozens of worlds requested permission to study their methods. Dr. Shin Dong-wook established research stations throughout the solar system where teams worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of what different technologies could accomplish when properly integrated. His historical knowledge of alien civilizations provided context for innovations that connected technologies separated by thousands of years of development. The most dramatic change came when Captain Oh Young-woo's exploration of the galactic core region discovered ancient ruins that contained technology from species that had vanished millions of years before current civilizations arose. Human integration techniques proved capable of reactivating systems that no other species could even understand. Lieutenant Quan Ye-jin commanded the fighter squadrons that escorted research vessels to these archaeological sites, where they found evidence that the galaxy had once been home to civilizations far more advanced than anything that existed in the present era. More importantly, they discovered that those ancient species had also practiced technology integration on a scale that modern aliens had never imagined. Chief Engineer Ko Hyun-sik coordinated the analysis of ancient artifacts that suggested humanity's approach to technology was not unique, but rather a rediscovery of principles that had been lost when the galaxy's predecessor civilizations destroyed themselves in wars over technological superiority. The implications were staggering. If humans could successfully integrate technologies from multiple sources, they might be able to prevent the cycle of conflict and collapse that had apparently repeated itself throughout galactic history. Pilot Yoon Ha-na established the first intergalactic communication network using modified alien transmission systems that could reach civilizations in neighboring galaxies. The responses they received indicated that the pattern of technological stagnation and imperial competition was common throughout the universe. A year after the defeat of the Draconian invasion fleet, Earth had become the center of a new kind of civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. Species that had never worked together began sharing technologies and developing joint projects that created capabilities none of them could have achieved alone. The former Scrapyard orbiting Earth was transformed into the galaxy's most advanced research and development facility, where engineers from hundreds of worlds worked together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system of competitive secrecy. President Ryu Yunhaye announced the establishment of the Integration Alliance, a voluntary association of species committed to technological cooperation and mutual defense against imperial aggression. Membership was open to any civilization willing to share knowledge and respect the independence of others. Ambassador Han Ji-hoon negotiated treaties that created free trade zones and technology exchanges throughout the galaxy, while maintaining Earth's commitment to never forcing other species to adopt human methods or values. Grand Admiral Lee Tae-ho oversaw the construction of Earth's first purpose-built starships that incorporated design principles learned from converting alien technology. These vessels surpassed anything in the galaxy by combining the best features of multiple species engineering traditions. Dr. Park So-jin established universities on dozens of worlds where students learned integration techniques that allowed them to solve problems their civilizations had considered impossible. The knowledge that had been developed in secret workshops was now transforming entire sectors of galactic society. The story concluded 5 years later when the first ships built entirely using integration principles departed Earth for the Andromeda, galaxy-carrying crews that included representatives from over 100 different species. Their mission was to establish contact with civilizations that had never been contacted by the Galactic Council and offer them alternatives to the imperial model that had dominated galactic politics for millennia. As the ships disappeared into hyperspace, President Ryu Yunhai reflected on how much had changed since humans had been considered useful only for taking apart other people's discarded technology. Now they were teaching the galaxy that the future belonged to those who could build bridges between different ways of thinking. The greatest lesson had been learned not through conquest, but through cooperation. When species stopped competing over who had the best technology and started working together to create something better than any of them could achieve. Alone, the galaxy became a place where impossible was just another word for something that nobody had figured out how to do yet. And humans had always been very good at figuring out how to do things that other people thought were impossible.